Take it away, Lincoln.
All right, great. Thanks, Tanya. I'm going to start sharing my screen here. So the way we like to start these is with an acknowledgement that we reside on and care for the ancestral lands and waters of the Coast Salish people who have stewarded and called this place home since time immemorial. And we honor inherent Aboriginal and treaty rights that have been passed down from generation to generation. Moving into it, our purpose tonight really is to talk about the stewardship program and its evolution over time. Something a little bit different than we've done in the past, but things have changed quite a bit, certainly since 1990, and we thought it might make a lot of sense to really look at how that program has evolved and where it's going. Our mandate, always have to put this up there, is broad, as everyone knows, but I think you could break it down into 4 basic ideas that we're preserving the values of ecosystem integrity, rural character and landscapes, community health, and agricultural sustainability. So, evolution of the stewardship program over time. When the program started in 1990, there was a preference, and this remains in the ordinance, to do conservation easements as opposed to purchase properties outright. Conservation easements are where you purchase rights from a landowner, but the property remains in private ownership. And the reasons for setting that preference at the beginning of the program was really about a few things. One, it was cheaper to purchase conservation easements than to purchase property outright. Also, you can protect views and rural character, which was a strong emphasis of the program when it began, coming out of the open space plan, the 1990 open space plan. And theoretically, at least, they're less expensive to manage, that you're only really having to monitor them once a year. They remain in private ownership, so the owner continues to pay taxes. But easements have definite drawbacks. First of all, they're very complicated. Each one is different. There's a huge range in what you accomplish with a conservation easement. In some cases, it's no development at all, no partitioning, nothing. In other cases, you're just removing a number of the development units, but a number still remain, and the owner has the ability to do quite a number of things. When the program started too, I don't think there was a realization about the fact that there was a reluctance of landowners to partner with government in their property, and that remains an issue today. Although we've had a fair amount of success, in some cases we've gotten people to sell conservation easements who are the next generation of landowner. So it's kind of interesting. Easements are also pretty limited in when you're trying to use them for proactive management. They're really set up to prevent people from doing things like developing an additional unit, which is not allowed. But if you're trying to get them to do something positive, it's much more difficult with a conservation easement. The tool really is pretty awkward to accomplish that. Also, generally, there's no public access with conservation easements, and they are subject to legal challenges, particularly when you have subsequent owners who may purchase a property that has an easement on it, and they read through that easement and decide that there are just things they don't like about it, and they may be willing to fight you on it. So that's kind of undoes some of the less expensive to purchase when you have to go back and deal with it in the legal system. Also, as the islands have developed, things have changed a lot since 1990. And with more properties developed, you see more no trespassing signs. There are just less places for people to go. And that's something that residents clearly want. Unfortunately, even with our efforts now, the county does not have a lot of public land by comparison to other Western Washington counties. And this is the breakdown. We're now getting close to 17%. We're still short of that, actually, but obviously we're quite a bit short of a number of other counties, which just have a lot more to offer people. So if you look at how this is broken down over time in terms of what we've purchased or been donated, you can see it fits pretty neatly into categories, with the initial decade really featuring a lot of conservation easement acreage acquisition. And then in the 2000s, that flips with much more outright ownership. That's largely due to the acquisition of Turtleback in 2006. But that trend continues in the 2010s and 2020s as well. So now currently we're over 5,000 acres of preserves that we own, with 2,300 acres in conservation easement. And this is what the map looks like, so everyone has a clear idea. The green is our preserves, the tan is conservation easements. We have 49 conservation easements on 7 islands, and we have 38 preserves, with 29 of those being open to the public. So I have to always throw in the impact on your taxes, because it's a question that comes up over and over again. What is the impact of us owning all of this property? And the reality is it's not really all that significant. That's because the taxable value of real estate in San Juan County is a somewhat mind-blowing $9.5 billion. It's almost $1 billion more than it was last year, according to the assessor. Whereas the taxable value of land bank preserves is very low. It's 40 million. The reason it's so low, that's not market value, but that's over 75% of the property that we've purchased has been in these low tax designations, like designated forest land, where there just wasn't a lot of tax being paid. So we did not remove much from the tax rolls or tax base. That 40 million puts us at about less than 0.5% of the total. San Juan County also has the lowest average tax rate in the state by far, at $7.11 per $1,000 in value. So just for perspective, in Island County, a property of the same value would cost you 25% more in property taxes. In Whitman, it would be almost double. So if we did take all of the land bank preserves and sell them back into private ownership, this is what you might see, keeping the taxes received the same. If you have a $500,000 property, you might save $15 in taxes by putting them back into private ownership. It's a little more complicated than that, but that gives you a pretty good idea. So getting back to stewardship and how it's changed over time, you can see that we've spent quite a bit more as we've acquired more acreage. It's not just more acreage, it's the fact that we have more properties that are publicly accessible, which costs a lot of money to maintain. And also, we've really transitioned from being more of a caretaker entity to actively managing properties, both for public access, but also doing restoration and landscape level management. So you can see our costs have gone up significantly. And with that, I'll just cut back to San Juan Island and the picture that we have today with our preserves. You can see them outlined in green, spread across the islands. You can see we've done a fairly good job of assembling some larger conservation areas. And the tan is our conservation easements. Of those preserves, 13 of them, of the 15, are open to the public. And we've got plans to increase that number and actually develop some of the properties which have public access into something a little bit more involved. And so that's really what Doug is going to get into, that question and the overall question of land management. So I'm going to stop here and let Doug take over.
Thank you, Lincoln. Thanks everybody for coming out tonight. Just looking through, we've got a lot of people who actually volunteer or have volunteered with me or worked with me. So really great to see you guys here. And I feel like I'm going to be preaching to the audience to some degree, but maybe there'll be some new nuggets in here. And I know from some of you characters, there's going to be some tough questions. So I look forward to that. Just trying to get to where my share screen. All right, looks like I am sharing. And so I've been tasked with here is really to talk a little bit about the stewardship program as a whole. And just like Lincoln, I'm going to start right back there with our mandate. And it is a very broad mandate, and it's a pretty challenging one to parse through. So we'll get into that in a little bit more here shortly. I did want to take an opportunity to introduce my colleagues that are part of the stewardship program here. Peter and Amanda at the top left there are my counterparts on Lopez and Orcas Islands, respectively. And we are responsible kind of for the stewardship of the preserves that have been acquired by the land bank on our individual islands. Charlie Mickey assists with preserves, agricultural management of the preserves, and he helps monitor conservation easements county-wide. Eliza Habegger oversees the Salish Seeds nursery operation, and she helps coordinate ecological assessments and restoration projects. Erin Halcombe serves as our stewardship coordinator, monitoring conservation easements, drafting management plans, and a host of other activities. And there's a couple of folks you'll see out on the land a lot. Jacob Wagner and Shauna Barrows, they're on the call tonight. They are outstanding field assistants based here on San Juan Island. And highly likely you'll see those guys in the land bank truck or out on any number of the preserves here on San Juan Island. Last and definitely not least, Margot Thorpe. We are super lucky to have her on board as a seasonal assistant at the Salish Seeds plant nursery. So while really I've been tasked with kind of focusing on San Juan Island here tonight, I want to really emphasize that we support one another's work. We share expertise, we assist each other with projects, we share staff, we share resources, and all of that really helps keep our stewardship program efficient, effective, and lean. So just really kind of an important part of our program is that kind of the colleagues we have going. So stewardship, what is stewardship? I mean, that name gets tossed around a lot these days. And from my perspective here at the Land Bank, it's defined as kind of our careful and responsible management of the resources that have been entrusted into our care. And that really begins with an intimate knowledge of the landscape and trying to understand it within the context of our mandate. It can be really challenging to weave these values together. A common one we use an example is that agriculture and public access aren't always compatible. So it takes a team of people with our diverse background, skills, knowledge to navigate these challenges, and of course, a heavy dose of community participation. Ultimately, these are public lands, and the community really has helped guide and shape what happens on them. One thing I would like to mention is that we do refer to our conservation lands in our care as preserves, not parks. And really, part of the reason is that name is intended to emphasize that natural resource conservation is really one of our primary focuses, and that developing sites specifically for recreational access is not. Most of our sites tend to be more informal access as opposed to kind of the more formal and large-scale developments you see with park developments. This approach keeps the program lean and provides kind of that more informal, low-intensity outdoor recreational access that islanders look for, rather than sort of developing our sites to help keep kind of promoting the tourism into things. Our stewardship activities take a lot of different forms. We try to prioritize our work based on the example shown here. This is an inverted triangle. Monitoring is kind of a big catch-all, and that includes activities which really is about giving us information on the condition of preserves and to some extent the people who visit them. This might include sort of informal natural history observations, hazard assessments, noting changes in public use patterns, those sorts of things. It extends to formal monitoring as well, like we do dedicated annual boundary walks and resource monitoring plots. It's really only through this intimate ongoing relationship with the land that we can be capable of making sound stewardship decisions. On to the next level, maintenance includes some of the obvious activities like picking up garbage and taking care of the built environment, trails, roads, fences, signs, gates, but it's also the upkeep of tools and equipment. And it also includes kind of these regular repeating activities on the properties that maybe you don't see as much. Noxious weed control, maintaining restoration plantings, just so many different activities. Last thing on our pyramid, it's kind of the bottom of it, are projects. And I really look at these as discrete new activities that have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And a lot of times this includes things like habitat restoration projects, trail construction, maybe it's stabilization of a historic building or creating an interpretive exhibit. These sort of projects typically, in theory, go to the bottom of the list, but when we're in the midst of them, they kind of tend to trump other activities. And last on the side there is administration. And really this is the glue that holds everything else together. We wouldn't be able to pull this off without having kind of this strong administrative side, keeping records, doing the planning, et cetera, et cetera. And a big part of this is the support in the rest of the staff. Aaron Rock, Tanya Williamson, Judy Cumming, Lincoln, all kind of anchors in the office. And really, I think it's really important to note here too that we are a county department and we are, working with and dependent on all of these other different county offices, the auditors, the treasurers, the assessors, public works, environmental resources, parks and fair, human resources, information technology, the sheriff and dispatch, facilities, fleet services, the health department, community development, and probably one of the more important, the prosecuting attorney. All of these different agencies support our work here at the Land Bank. Okay, Lincoln kind of flashed this image up. I just wanted to start there real quick, getting the whole picture of all of this different work that's happened, over 30 years across the county. And it's missing, we haven't quite updated this map yet with some of the newer acquisitions, but then I'll focus in here really down into San Juan Island. And I've added two parcels with the red borders at the middle of this image. The upper kind of L-shaped parcel was acquired last year in the first quarter of the year. It added 140 acres to the northwest side of Katy Mountain Preserve. It connects it with Roach Harbor Watershed and is just one parcel removed from the English Camp unit of San Juan Island National Historic Park. The lower square is an active acquisition project we expect to close on in the coming month. This will add 40 acres to the preserve, including 30 acres of really prime Gary Oak habitat, and actually what I consider anyways, the true summit of Katy Mountain. The Land Bank Stewardship Program really has two primary functions. We monitor those conservation easements that Lincoln described, and we manage our fee-owned preserves. The key differences being that conservation easements protect resources on privately owned property, while preserves are owned outright. Easements are monitored annually in collaboration with the current landowners to ensure that the conservation resources that are being protected, that we've invested those funds into. Management plans are the tool that we use to guide the actions and activities that take place on land bank preserves. And the process to develop management plan is initiated following an acquisition. And it will take a couple of years typically, because we need to spend some time with assessments on the new preserve's conservation resources to really get to know the preserve, get a solid understanding of its sort of context and values in order to make informed decisions. Community input and involvement is a really important part of that process. And as Lincoln mentioned again, as you can see here, 13 of the 15 land bank preserves on San Juan Island have some form of public access. We're working on those other two, as well as a couple of projects I'll talk about here in just a minute to kind of enhance some public access on some other sites. And while we kind of are focusing here initially on talking about public access, that often generates a lot of the immediate interest. But our stewardship activities include gosh, just a host of many other things. And to start with, we'll talk about some habitat and species restoration projects that are ongoing. And there's a lot of work to be done in the maintenance, restoration, and enhancement of natural areas in the islands, particularly in light of climate change. So these are some of our current ongoing projects on San Juan Island: Gary Oak habitat restoration, riparian habitat, wetland restoration, and we have some kind of novel endangered island marble butterfly plots that we're working with some partners on. The combination of the Washington Conservation Corps, the Island Conservation Corps, it's a program through the Conservation District, volunteers, a number of you who are on here tonight fit in that category, and land bank staff. We put in more than 1,000 hours last year into oak restoration project on Katy Mountain. That's huge. I think that was our biggest year to date. In addition to all of this restoration work, land bank staff, volunteers, and work crews annually expend hundreds of hours in the control of noxious weeds across all of our preserves. One exciting project that we'll be initiating this year is a U.S. Forest Service grant-funded landscape scale restoration project. This project was awarded to the State Department of Natural Resources, and it encompasses 4 sites spread across the county, including a 15 to 20 acre site on Mountain Grant. Other sites include Turtleback on Orcas, Jones Island State Park, and a San Juan Preservation Trust Preserve over on the east side on Decatur Island. Some of our partners in this project include the Conservation District, including this new San Juan Islands Conservation Corps, the Samish Indian Nations Department of Natural Resources, Orcas-based forestry consultant, Rain Shadow Consulting, and the State Department of Natural Resources. Part of this, and I think Bruce, you'll be excited about this bit, this will include a pilot project for biochar production as a means to sequester carbon and build soil resources. I've heard say that this is actually potentially the largest sort of single biochar focused project that has been undertaken in the Pacific Northwest. So we talk a lot about Gary Oak habitat, and it's really been a focal area for protection and restoration for the land bank. These habitats have been severely diminished from their historic range. There's estimates that kind of place it at about 5% of this habitat remaining from its pre-colonial extent. So Gary Oak habitats range from wet prairies all the way into Douglas fir woodlands. And while these individual habitats may have some sort of unique qualities, one really important shared characteristic is they have exceptional biodiversity. And the extent sort of oak habitat within the San Juan Islands is of regional significance, especially in consider of the projected impacts from climate change. These habitats were established during a period of time which was warmer and drier than today, if you can believe that. Their projected suitability is expected to increase dramatically as climate warms and habitat types contract and shift in response to that warming. The image on the right here shows one model of projected expansion of suitable Gary Oak habitat due to climate change over the next 80 years. And that's kind of a massive shift. It's hard to make out the islands in there, but you can see that the surrounding region is going to be having some major changes, and these habitat types can be something that will help fill the void and maintain high levels of biodiversity. Coupled with this, as our restoration efforts increased in this area, we discovered that native plants integral to this habitat were just about impossible to source, especially locally. To surmount this roadblock for our own needs and to support the work of partner organizations, we initiated the Salish Seeds Nursery Project. Today it's run in collaboration with the San Juan Preservation Trust, operating out of their Red Mill Farm property and here on San Juan Island. Periodically, there's opportunities for the public to purchase plants from the nursery. While small in size, this nursery plays a just incredibly vital role in providing plant material for restoration efforts throughout the islands and building expertise in propagation of native plants. As I noted in that previous slide, it can be expected that the opportunity and need for these types of plants will dramatically increase over the next century. Small and mighty, the Salish Seeds Nursery is an important role in regional response to climate change. Shifting gears, here's just a small sampling about the land bank's role in local agriculture. Conservation of these lands have increased in importance over the years as development and growth has reduced agricultural lands in the county by greater than 50%. Rising property values have also made it very difficult for new farmers to get established. These lands play an important role in open space, our community structure, long-term resilience, and are foundational to our community's identity. On San Juan Island, portions of Beaverton Marsh, False Bay Creek, Fraser Homestead, King Sisters Preserve, and Zylstra Lake are all currently in some form of agricultural use. This includes long-term leases and short-term use agreements, and in some cases, partnering with outside agencies to provide opportunities for both research and education. A short example coming from Zylstra Lake Preserve, in 2021, Adam Green and Sarah Pope were awarded a short-term lease. They brought in at least 7 other local farms to help with the harvest and providing resources to these small farmers. Many of these farmers lack haying equipment and otherwise were making multiple trips off island for their hay. The savings in time, ferry congestion, and reduction in the carbon footprint of these operations is beyond significant. They also have initiated soil amendments and other practices to help put resources back in the soil and reduce impacts to wildlife. Agricultural practices and trends change with time, and the land bank aims to be a leader in helping San Juan County continue to adopt sustainable agricultural practices. So I want to take a little bit of time to highlight some of the major projects that we have going on for stewardship here on San Juan Island. There are many, many more things happening than I'm able to detail, including projects that are happening on other islands. And I would like to note that several of the projects I'm about to describe couldn't have been successful without our strong partnership with the local nonprofit land trust, the San Juan Preservation Trust. So this image shows San Juan Valley and Zylstra Lake Preserve in sort of the context of the False Bay watershed. Zylstra Lake is easily the most complicated and complex property the land bank has taken on to date. It's a confluence of agricultural, environmental, and recreational values. After approving an interim management plan, Zylstra Lake Preserve opened to the public access in fall of 2020. During the winter access is restricted to the west side of the lake, with fishing and dogs not permitted in an effort to help protect migratory waterfowl. April through September, access expands to a loop route around the lake with leashed dogs allowed and fishing permitted pending water quality. This project continues to be a focal effort for the organization and includes research and resolution of water rights, assessment and upgrade of ailing infrastructure, and opportunities for agriculture, habitat restoration, and recreation. The long-term management plan has been delayed while some of these assessments continue, but it remains a big priority for us. And improving water quality is one of the primary goals for this preserve. Shown here in the wintertime, the physical connection between Zylstra and the False Bay couldn't be more obvious with this complex system of integrated wetlands and braided stream channels through the lower part of San Juan Valley. Last year, water quality conducted by the University of Washington throughout the watershed revealed very high levels of nitrogen and phosphorus at the entrance of the seasonal stream to Zylstra Lake, outlined in red here. Coupled with warm water and shallow lakes, these elevated levels contribute to low oxygen and are a likely culprit for toxic algal blooms. The exact sources of these nutrients is not well understood, but the land bank is initiating a project to help improve water quality entering the lake and restore some upland riparian habitat. To this end, we are leading a novel restoration project with multiple partners: the San Juan County Department of Environmental Stewardship, San Juan Islands Conservation District, the Islands Conservation Corps, University of Washington, Western Washington University, and the San Juan Preservation Trust. Our site design includes installation of beaver dam analogs. These barriers will be placed in a ditched channel. Currently, it's an old ditch, and it's aimed at slowing, dispersing, and filtering stream flow. For additional biofiltration of harmful nutrients, biochar will be incorporated into plantings and the surrounding soil, and woody debris will be inoculated with mushrooms as a form of mycoremediation. Riparian plantings coupled with large woody debris would be utilized to help slow and disperse water flow, providing additional filtration and ultimately raising the water table. Native riparian plants will help decrease water temperatures, improve wetland function, and provide wildlife habitat. Wow. That's a big one. And we're going to shoot over to the other side of the island to Beaverton Marsh Preserve, another super exciting project. This preserve is nestled between the northwest side of Friday Harbor, bound by Roach Harbor Road on the north and Beaverton Valley Road on the south. The foreground of this image shows the Beaverton Valley side of the preserve and those forested uplands in the distance. A highly scenic preserve contains the bulk of the largest wetland complex in San Juan County and includes very rare, peat bog habitat. We are largely remaining in an assessment and planning phase for this preserve, and the envision includes protection and restoration of the wetland and upland habitats, as well as trails connecting with Island Rex Lindy Park. The map here shows our working public access concept, which includes 4 phases. Site work for phase 1 has already been initiated, and we intend to have it open for public access by the end of this year. Planning for the remaining phases is in high gear. In addition to public access related work, a lot of other stuff is happening here. Last spring, we hosted a sustainable forest management workshop for the forest landowners through the Northwest Natural Resources Group and the San Juan Islands Conservation District and Rain Shadow Consulting. Look for us later this month along Beaverton Valley Road, tackling Scott's Broom and Spurge Laurel in collaboration with the Conservation Corps crew and San Juan County Noxious Weed Board staff. There's going to be additional opportunities here through the year for noxious weed control and trail construction. Back to the middle of the island and the Katy Mountain Preserve. As I mentioned earlier, 140 acres was added to this preserve last year. According to one assessment done by the Nature Conservancy, this large block of land ranks very high in assessments for long-term climate resilience within the region. And this is largely due to its diverse topography, the habitat types present here, and the connections with other large tracts of undeveloped land. Together with English Camp and the Roach Harbor watershed, the block of undeveloped land totals 2,703 acres of diverse habitats and includes extensive recreational trails. Trails from the Mitchell Hill Roach Harbor complex leading into the property have been enjoyed by adventurous hikers, bikers, and equestrians for decades. Prior and following the acquisition, myself and other staff noted unsanctioned trail creation activity happening as people sought out ways to reopen old routes that used to connect between Three Corner Lake Road. Taking a look at this in a bid to sort of reduce impacts and avoid the potential of trespass onto adjacent private land, we decided to formalize an access route by opening up an existing old logging road. Access here at this point is informal, with no parking or trailhead at the Three Corner Lake roadside. The closest trailhead is over at the National Park's Mitchell Hill, and the shortest round trip one can make doing that route is a little over 6 miles. It shows up on the map there with that blue dotted line, if you didn't pick up on that. And there's where the trailhead's located for that up there. So with this pending acquisition, the Katy Mountain Preserve will increase to 472 acres. It's an impressively large and biologically diverse property. It includes the oldest known living Gary oak in the world. Assessments to inform long-term management plan will continue through this year, along with our ongoing Gary oak habitat restoration. Following the completion of the management plan, we anticipate public access developed to begin sometime in the next 2 years. So last, I do want to give a nod to volunteers. And again, you'll probably see some photos if we look in here closely of some of the people who are on the presentation here tonight. So thank you again for your participation as volunteers and for attending here tonight. So we really have been slowed down due to COVID, but we're trying to get kind of back up and going with some of our volunteer projects. One of those that's just happened recently is in the bottom middle there, where you see Tim Cowell and Jim Getz along with Jacob Wagner installing a new kiosk at the Lime Kiln Preserve. Opportunities volunteering with Land Bank include helping care for native plants at the Sailor Seeds Nursery, trail construction, signing on as a volunteer steward to help care for a specific preserve, participating in restoration projects, and just so much more. If you're interested in joining in with some of the fun here, please let us know. Tanya Williamson is the best contact at the land bank. I'm just going to close with this slide because I think it says everything both in image and in quote. This is the sweetest land in the whole world, surely, for playing in, for living in. Just look at it. So thank you very much. I think we're headed on from here to questions and answers.
Thanks, Doug. That was great.
My controls went away. So Tanya, do you want to, are you mediating Q&A?
I am here and I'm trying to figure out how to get rid of your screen.
Oh, you're getting to look at my screen.
Yeah, you're still sharing.
Stop share. There we go.
Woo! We're back.
The problem with 2 monitors. It's double the fun.
No, that made me crazy. So, Doug, thank you, and Lincoln. But wow, Doug, I don't know if people are gonna have any questions left after that. That was amazing. But if you do have questions, obviously we would love to hear from them. And before we move on, Mike Pickett, our newest commissioner, made it on. Mike, would you mind giving a little wave so people see you on there? And so again, as a reminder, it would be very helpful for me to get you to the top. If you have a question and you would like to speak on camera, down at the bottom where it has reactions, there's a spot to click raise your hand, and then it'll bring you to the top. And we can go ahead and keep track that way, or if people would like to put questions in the chat, I will monitor that and I can read those out loud as well. So with that said, is there anybody who has a question or a comment? Bruce.
Hi, this is Bruce Robinson, and I'm here representing the San Juan Island Grange, specifically the Agricultural Support Committee. I know that this month, the commissioners are looking at accepting a policy, agricultural policy statement, and I'm curious, first of all, as to when that's going to be happening. Do we have a date for that?
We do. That will be happening at our next meeting, which is the 17th, so a week from Friday.
Okay, thank you. I have a lot of questions, but I think it might be better for me to wait until that meeting to ask some of these questions, because it takes a lot of background to frame the question. So let me just ask a few things here. Number one is in relation to getting new farmers onto land. It's, as it was pointed out, I think Lincoln pointed out that land is just so expensive that leasing land from the land bank makes it possible oftentimes for new farmers to get started. But the question, the difficulty would be moving from using the land in the traditional way. For example, if it was used for grazing in the past and someone came on and wanted to have a market garden, they would have to have some infrastructure changes. And I know that's not necessarily something that works well for the land bank, but maybe with a partner that can be done. And as a matter of fact, I found the statement on page 9 and 10 of that agricultural policy that states that it's possible that the land bank could partner with another agency. And I'm not necessarily committing the Grange to this, but thinking maybe the Grange, and the Grange would be responsible for the monitoring the infrastructure changes, while the land bank would be monitoring the land use and keep making sure that it's not abused. Does this make sense to everybody there or anybody there?
Well, we're certainly very interested in partnering with other organizations in a variety of ways. So definitely one of the challenges that we've faced with agricultural properties is the cost of infrastructure, even traditional infrastructure. But once you get into more intensive uses, that cost does go up. And it's highly significant. So we're always looking for other organizations to partner. We get grants. We've received grants from the Conservation District to help offset the cost of some of that infrastructure. But we're happy to partner with whoever is interested. And Charlie may want to kick in something here. Charlie, you're on mute, but go ahead.
Yeah, hi everybody. Hi Bruce. Great questions. And you may be aware of this. I think Sarah Severin's on the call also. There's a project right now through the Ag Guild, the Beginner Farmer Rancher Development Grant. It's a few-year grant that we're collaborating with them and WSU and the district. And I don't know why the Grange isn't in there at the table, but perhaps there's an opportunity to join that conversation. But one focus group of that project is really looking at that access issue and how we can all those stakeholders come together to address that issue of getting new farmers on the land, more opportunities. Infrastructure is a huge part of that, and obviously housing, water, soils, all those elements. So you should be at that table.
Yes, Sarah and I have had some discussions about this already. She's certainly part of the Grange, and we've had some discussion. They're just in the study portion, it seems like at this point, so we don't have any commitments, but she and I will continue to talk about things. I guess I'll just let it go at that point. I do have a list of other questions, but I'll try to get to the meeting on the 17th, and that will be advertised. Will that be sent out to everybody on your mailing list?
Yes, it'll go out via our newsletter or our e-news, but it's also on the online calendar, Bruce. And you can
Okay.
to the calendar, it'll alert you. And then on the website itself, there is a section that says agenda and minutes. And so usually about the week prior, which I guess would be next Monday, we'll have the agenda up and the link will be on there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Before I get to Nancy or Steve, I know Caroline, there you are. You had your hand up earlier. Do you still have a question or a comment?
Oh, I actually, that was supposed to be a clap.
Oh, sorry.
Reaction.
It's the new glasses.
Thank you. It's nice to have good glasses. You're gorgeous as always. I do have a little question, which is a little bit off topic, but I'm wondering, is the recording going to be available for us to use and with permissions share? It was really just a great presentation and energetic one. So I would love to be able to share it with our students. Is that okay?
I would imagine so, but we can double check with Doug. This meeting itself will be recorded and on our YouTube channel, but it sounds like you prefer just his fabulous presentation.
I like the whole thing. I actually like the comments as well. I'm very interested in what everybody has to ask. Can't teach environmental science to young people if they don't understand the complexities that y'all are dealing with all the time.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. I think Steve, you had your hand up first, if you'd like to go, and then Nancy will move to you.
Actually, it was Nancy who was up first.
Oh, was it? Okay, thank you. Nancy, would you like to go? Oh, but you're muted, Nancy.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Maybe connectivity is a little problem for me today, so I apologize, but I had two kind of questions. One was, I wondered, is it possible that the land bank could get pretty specific in some of its projects? Like, I have an interest in seeing old orchards preserved, and I've kind of wondered, there are people all over the island that have either remnants or whole old orchards, and I would be interested, I haven't looked at the agricultural policies or anything yet, but I would be interested in just seeing a project possibly sponsored under the land bank of that. And I know Doug is interested in old orchards too. Then also I wanted to ask, I was talking to a well-known farmer, and Lincoln and I were talking about him the other day. And I asked him how receptive would he be to conservation easements on, say, his orchard. And he said, well, the issue for me would be the loss in value by putting them in conservation easements versus the cash generated from the conservation, from selling the conservation easement to the land bank. And I think this is a classic issue when you're approaching landowners. So I wondered if I could hear how you all approach that when you're talking to a farmer that might have land that would be great to preserve.
Yeah, I'll take that second one. It really depends on the property a lot. In some cases, larger properties have become pretty hard to obtain. And so putting a conservation easement on it, which may limit your ability to subdivide the property into multiple units, actually may not decrease the value much at all. It may be that it remains just as valuable as it was because people are really looking for those larger properties, and the conservation easement can actually be a positive. But it depends on the particular scenario. Is it in a good location to have a more extensive development, or is it not? Every property is different. Every context is different.
And there may be like a 10-acre minimum or something, or more even. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Lincoln. Yeah. And how about the first question? Anybody have a response to that?
Well, I don't know, Doug, do you have? That's a hard one. That's a hard one for us in that, we're really, the two things we do are purchase preserves and do conservation easements. So working on properties that are outside of that, working on a project on a private property that's not protected can prove pretty difficult for us. But I don't know, Doug, maybe you've got some great answer to this one.
Yeah, that's a great question. And yeah, I am a big fan of these historic orchards and whatnot. And I guess, having this breadth of a mandate, how you whittle down into getting into specifics, it's pretty hard for us to take on sort of projects or properties with a single focus. They almost always have some pretty big breadth to them. And when we've been sort of invited to participate in things that have kind of more discrete focuses, we've kind of steered away from that in the past. An example was, when the Trails Committee was going from an ad hoc group to being, looking to be under some other agency, we were one of the people they came kind of shopping to. And after some thought, we actually decided that wasn't the best fit because we don't just do trails. We do a lot of different things. And I kind of see us as being kind of setting a stage where a lot of other things unfold. And so while I think we'd be really supportive of protection and interpretation of some orchards and trees that end up in our care, it doesn't seem as much of a really great fit for us with in the end, surprisingly limited resources and for what we're charged for doing to get too far down into rabbit holes of individual kind of projects like that.
Well, I hear you. I guess what I also wanted to say, though, I was assuming you would use conservation easements, like your usual tools, and so you would be approaching people who might be receptive to preservation of their orchards when they're gone or whatever. So it'd be your usual thing. But I'm not totally clear on when you solicit a property owner, or how much you call somebody up and say, we'd really be interested in your property in the land bank, what is it that guides you to do that? Is it large acreage? Is it the position, the location on the island? It's an intact farm that's operating. I'm not too clear on that yet.
It's a variety of things. But yeah, the size of the property is certainly key. The condition of the property is certainly a key. We tend not to make cold calls to property owners to ask if they want to do conservation easements. We do hear about a lot of potential transactions, or we hear from folks like you've called me about this particular property that you mentioned before, and it comes to our attention in that way. And so we're more than happy to talk to folks. I think we have to talk to them, and we have to take a look at the property before we can say, is this a good fit for us or not?
Well, that makes sense. Do you have a goal that you want to add so much agricultural land to the land bank by 20 years from now, to preserve a certain amount of farmland, or to protect it from becoming residential? Or do you have goals like that?
We don't really have an acreage goal for agricultural land. And it's hard for us to do that kind of thing because a lot depends on opportunity. We're aware of key agricultural parcels. We're aware of where we've got good agricultural soils, or where there may be an agricultural water right. So we're paying attention to those kinds of things. But we can't really set up, we're out to get 500 acres, under protection, that kind of goal. That's a difficult one for us to do.
Okay, thank you.
And Steve, one moment, please. I think Charlie had a comment for Nancy on one of her questions. Thank you for your patience.
Yeah, hi Nancy. Just to jump back to the historic orchard question, one potential in that vein would be to look at a lease opportunity if there was interest from another group to establish a new historic orchard, a community type orchard. There could be a place for that. So if you have ideas, come to me, come to us.
No, I appreciate that, your support up to this point too already on that. And here's Lopez with 100 trees going in over there. They're doing a great job, but thank you for that. Yeah.
Thank you. That was great discussion. Great question. Steve Olvey, thank you for your patience.
Oh yeah, no problem. Hi. I'm not going to repeat my positive comments about what I think about the land bank, the commission, the staff, and your mission, because I think it would be impossible to overstate how important it really is. And you guys are great all the way through the ranks, the people I work with and the people I try to help out, just wonderful people. So good on you all the way through. But you also know that I'm a critic, and I'm not going to ask about climate and sustainability and things, because I've been yapping my flap about that with the commission and things for the last year and a half or two. And I know there's some work being done, but I'm going to ask a couple things. One, agricultural, since we're on that topic, I would like to come back to what I call chasing unicorns at Zylstra Lake. But the agricultural question is, my assumption, and from what I understand, I know something about soils and all the rest of it, is that most of the arable land and pasture that you folks have purchased and are managing, and I'd like to see a lot more of it in protection, that those soils are pretty seriously degraded and they're not being fertilized necessarily properly and things. So I'm wondering what your plan is for those soils, and bringing those up to being better carbon sequestration and healthier soils for grass or hay or pasture or whatever.
So I'll pass that one to either Charlie or Doug.
I'll take the bat. It's a challenge, Steve. As you say, we acquire these lands and they're pretty well used, haven't been amended a lot over the years. A lot of haying, a lot of grazing, hayings, just mining the soil. So taking that deficit and bringing it up, it's a big challenge. And with this policy, if you've looked it over, the agricultural policy you mentioned earlier, we're setting out to improve the situation. So far, the attempts have been met with many challenges also in the last couple of years. Was trying to get lime onto the fields last year, but ferries and the lime guy and everything else that fell through. We don't have a local source for a lot of compost, and I know you've advocated for a local facility here, which would be an awesome contribution to the community, the farming community, and everyone else. So we haven't had a whole lot besides getting some animals back on the land, trying to improve grazing practices, looking at local input potential. I'm going to try again to get lime on the fields out at Zylstra this year. Those fields, they're not too bad. There's been some applications out there in the recent history, and soil tests aren't bad, but even if they're okay, if you're just mining it, it's not going to work out. So we do what we can. There's the no-till drill that the conservation district invested in, and as a community asset, that has potential to restore some of the pastures, get new species into the field that might help with some of that sequestration and sucking in nitrogen, clovers and vetch. So exploring some of those ideas, and we've been part of trials in that vein. On a smaller scale, we have partnered with WSU to do some field trials where we are looking at the impact of bringing in nutrients and what it would take if you did put $1,000 per acre on a field. Sure, it would help. How do we do that? So we're thinking of a lot about it. We're trying. There's a lot of challenges, and I welcome input. Or if you like driving a tractor.
Good answer, Charlie. I want to jump in on that just a little bit and bring it back into a little bit broader picture than just agriculture even, and go back to some of what Lincoln was alluding to at the beginning of his talk. And when the land bank program started, the stewardship side was pretty lean. The initial vision really was not to have any staff at all, but to kind of rely on volunteers. And a lot of the early documentation that I've read through seemed to think that you acquire this easement or you acquire the property and we're done. We did it. Job accomplished. And, I think there's just so much awareness that has happened through the community, through changes, through environmental awareness, that it's not done. It's an ongoing project with every element that we're involved in. And so we're, as Lincoln also alluded to, we're really ramping up across the board, and that includes in those agricultural areas. One of the things that makes the agricultural side unique is we're having this sort of partnership where we're invested in the land, we're invested in that possibility that it represents, but we also have this, commercial operation that's happening with it. And so how much of that responsibility ends up being spread between the lessee and what they're trying to accomplish and what we're trying to accomplish in terms of the overall health and quality of that property. And in particular, in some of the things you were bringing to light about climate change, carbon sequestration, local resiliency, all of those other benefits. It is a balancing act, and it's something that I think we're putting more effort into, and that agricultural policy document really helps lay some sort of framework or a path forward of how we see ourselves fitting into that envelope. Charlie and I were chatting about this just yesterday and noting that the cost of amendments has gone through the roof here this last year. And so even some of the local farmers who we have as lessees or collaborate with are deciding on their own just to, hold off on any amendments in the next year or two, just based on those economics. That really points to a resiliency problem, right? Like if we're dependent on these outside resources to improve the quality of the lands here, I think that is another indication towards that community compost or other practices that we can have happen here to improve the situation as a whole. So we're part of this whole picture, but we really need kind of these other groups and agencies, I think, to make this end goal that we seem to all be talking about and wanting to reach.
I think Jim has something he'd like to contribute.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on sort of a broader scale that to your question, Steve, and that is that these are things that we're definitely. I mean, soil amendments and the health of the soil are certainly things that are always on our minds, and sometimes these are things that we can write into conservation easements as best practices, or even things that we'll monitor with conservation easements. And then with regards to preserves, I think there's a lot of opportunity to look at opportunities to amend the soils. As a land manager myself, privately, it's important to add nutrients to our soils, because I think we all know that our soils have been depleted. I mean, the whole haying picture on in this county for the last 100 years has just been, hay, and not add anything to enrich that hay. And that's why so many of these hay fields are not producing the best hay out there. So I just wanted to say that these things are on our minds. They're things that we can incorporate into management plans. They're things that we can incorporate into conservation easement requirements even. So thank you for bringing that up. Soils, the health of our soil is very important, and especially here in the islands where, we have, well, let's just say it's not the best soil, but we work with what we've got, and the more awareness we have about soil health, the better things are going to be going forward for farmers.
Thank you. Does anybody else have a comment, either David or Mike? Otherwise, we can move on to Shonda. You have a question or comment? Oh, sorry, Steve. You have something else?
Yeah, just thank you very much, Charlie and Doug and Jim, for a very good answer to my question. And I just want to point out that we hope, some of us here in the community and within the county, we hope that we're going to be pushing forward with some kind of community composting facility, if we can ever find a place to put it in the future here. And I hope the land bank is one of the consumers of some of that homegrown soil amendment and can be a model for that. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks for the patience, Shonda. You go ahead.
Oh, no problem. No, I'm very happy to be here today and hear about what you're doing. My background is in conservation, wetland restoration. So I love all of that. I did just want to introduce, which I know I've mentioned this to Lincoln before, but now that we're kind of getting back on track after COVID, while it's still going on, we're getting back a little bit. But just to bring up, of course, because I have to, the wildlife, because we talk a lot, of course, about the human interaction with the environment and whether it's for beauty, recreation, or for farming. But I really would like to expand upon looking at how it is improving the habitat for the animals. So for the wildlife, and what does that look like? How can we measure it? Can we see what's working and what's not working? So I just would like to go, of course, a little bit with that. but I can also speak with Lincoln about that later. But I just thought I'd bring it up just because I know wildlife sometimes is kind of the last thing to think about, which I know it's okay, but it would be great to kind of get that going on.
Yeah, it's definitely not the last thing that we think about.
Oh, good.
So we're constantly looking at our landscapes and the different areas that we have and trying to figure out how we enhance those for wildlife. And we've got some big challenges, quite honestly.
Oh, I know.
We have some wetland areas like Beaverton Marsh, which is heavily degraded, and mostly reed canary grass, and getting that back to some semblance of a functional marsh is going to be a long, slow, costly process. But it's certainly something that we endeavor to do. And the same thing for the forest lands that we have, where we do have some good high quality forest lands, even some old growth areas, which are fantastic. And we do see some amazing wildlife out there. But we've also got some areas that, are way too overstocked with trees and need some intervention. But that's all that's on our list. It's just a question of prioritizing and finding the resources to do it.
Right,
Doug,
right. And I realize that. And I would love to, again, partner with you for looking for grants that would meet all of our kind of what we're looking for. So we can work together on that. So thank you.
Thank you. So we've still got about 20 minutes left. Are there any other comments or questions from anyone on the call or? Steve Olvey.
Well, I'm never short of words. So I wanted to get back and appreciate Shonda's comments there about wildlife. I love wildlife too. Right now I'm commiserating because I don't have healthy deer to kill in the fall here on my property to eat, and that we've had this adenovirus, the hemorrhagic adenovirus, and it looks like the state's going to probably continue to leave the season open for either sex, but we'll see. I complained loudly, but I don't know if anybody else did. But my question is about seeking unicorns at Zylstra Lake. And I was interested in Doug's presentation there, the whole thing, very well done. And then the business about trying to restabilize, establish really a drainage pattern there after all the years of agricultural activity and below all the way down to False Bay and all of that. And I really, the thing I guess I'll just be honest about is anytime I hear that one of the goals is establishment of some kind of a spawning population of salmonids in False Bay Creek, I just feel like lighting the little bit of hair that I have left on fire, because I consider that absurd. And I couldn't be more clear than that. And I see the water filtration. I see the elegance of using fungi and other things. Hopefully, it's reasonably low cost. But so I guess my question, so that I'm not sounding like I'm on a soapbox, which I am, my question is, where is the cost breakdown for the entire Zylstra Preserve with dealing with that degraded shallow lake? Problems with the bottom. It's always flushing downstream. It goes through the whole system and all of that. Where is the cost analysis so that I don't sit here in 2 years or whatever, if I live that long, and see that slowly but surely the costs have been driven up with trying to improve that water quality. And one of the goals is still having some kind of a salmonid spawning population. I just don't want to see that. I think it's chasing unicorns. There, I've said it. Thank you.
It looks like Doug wants to respond to that.
Oh yeah, I'd be happy to. Because it's the first thing I guess I would say is water quality improvement doesn't necessarily equate salmonid habitat being the goal. I think being able to verbalize our goals in an organizational way has yet to happen. We're still working through particularly issues surrounding water rights and how we kind of nest these values together. I'm willing to say that for my own opinions, that I wouldn't put the primary goal there trying to restore salmon habitat. I see the primary goal being improving water quality from the degraded situation it's in currently, both for intrinsic value, even agricultural value, and really for what we're delivering down into False Bay. In terms of salmon and supporting salmon, what I see our biggest role being is there's some really good research that's happened over the last 2 decades that shows that the San Juan Islands, our estuaries, our nearshore environments, are utilized by salmon from the entire region. All of the rivers through Puget Sound and up in the Georgia Basin are spending time as juveniles in our nearshore environment, and especially places like False Bay. And so if we are delivering really low water quality, even toxic water down into that area, that's kind of unacceptable, and if we can play a part in improving that water quality, it benefits salmon through the entire region. If those actions that we do ends up making it so that there are salmon coming up into the stream and we're getting some spawning activity in the lower reaches from some chum or whatnot, hey, that's great, and we can move forward from there in deciding whether we want to put some more efforts in to doing more specific restoration. But I really see a separate thing between improving water quality and having a goal of explicit salmon restoration. Further, I would say is we're in this process right now of embarking on getting the water rights sort of nailed down. We're really confident that we acquired those rights when we acquired the property. It was very intentional on our part to do that. But there's a big outstanding question of, were those rights actually still in existence? Were those rights exercised properly? And as part of this process that we're involved in, that's going to be looked at by the state. And if they come to a resolution that decides, no, these rights weren't exercised properly, it's highly unlikely that those rights are able to get returned based on the kind of system we're in. And so in terms of a cost breakdown, we can't begin to look at a cost breakdown until we have those issues resolved. We need to know sort of the field we're playing with in order to set goals and really sort of sort out what we're going to be wanting to expend resources on. The last thing I'll say about those financial resources, this watershed has been identified over and over as an area of importance, and we have partners through the Clean Water Funds, environmental resources, through the funding mechanism we purchased the property from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and others who have expressed interest in putting money towards restoration efforts to help with some of these issues. So I don't think we would be out there by ourselves on some of these projects. And this one restoration project with our beaver dam analogs and things we're jumping into right now, we're not anticipating this being an enormous cost. And this is working, it's not reducing any of the agricultural lands beyond what already is kind of set in there with conservation easements. This is kind of a low-hanging fruit project in an attempt to clean up water that's coming into the reservoir as a kind of first step towards trying to improve things with regards to those toxic algal blooms, low dissolved oxygen, high nitrogen, high phosphorus, all of these things that are really not being beneficial to any wildlife, living creatures. So how's that for a litany response to your question?
Yeah, Steve, I would just cap that off by saying we're not under any illusions that we think we can bring salmonids back into the system. We have no idea. I don't think that's really realistic, frankly, but if we focus on that water quality goal and on creating a healthier situation where we've got a more functional system, both for agriculture and for the natural system itself. I think that's really where we're headed. We're not going to chase that unicorn. If I mean, I think it's an extremely daunting prospect to restore salmonids into that system, and it's even a question of what was there originally. You know, what are we actually restoring? Something that used to be? We don't know. So we're going to focus on these other goals at this point and see where that gets us.
Great. Is there anyone else?
Caroline had her hand up a little while ago. There it is.
There she is. I know she struggled earlier with her Zoom when we had a meeting. There you are. You're still muted if you're trying to get on.
Hi. I just had a kind of a quick thought. I'm really just very much enjoying this conversation. I've not participated in these before. I just follow from the sidelines, I guess. So it's what's interesting to me, of course, are all the people that you kind of wish were on this kind of a call, where they could see what I see, which is this really important and sort of diving deep kind of questions about how we do some very complicated things. And I'm wondering if you have had anything that you've seen that has worked in the past, or what your goals might be, and kind of getting this important stuff out there into, you know, we have a lot of newcomers on the island, other folks, where we want to kind of get them to buy in to this kind of common goal of preserving and protecting this beautiful place, and, you know, being sustainable about our footprint here. So any guidelines there, or how you might bring in other parties to help, or whatever, however you want to interpret that question?
Yeah, that's our endless struggle, basically. It's really difficult in this community, maybe in every community, but particularly here, everything is so fragmented. It's tough. It's not like we have a daily newspaper that people read, or a TV station or radio station. It's like we've got all these little outlets that people are tuned into. And frankly, a lot of what it comes down to is word of mouth, to get the word out to do whatever you're trying to do. We start in our quest to reach out to new homeowners, that we send everyone a packet who purchases property here, outlining what we do, because we want them to know that they have contributed already in purchasing that property. And we want them to know what we're up to, and give them an opportunity to participate and, you know, open the door for volunteer efforts or questions or whatever they want. So that's the first thing we do. You know, one of the things I really hate to hear is when someone's purchased a property and they tell me that they didn't know anything about the land bank tax until they got to closing. It's a terrible introduction, quite honestly. So we do spend a lot of time talking to realtors also, because we think, you know, it's a selling point, honestly, rather than something to be avoided. So a lot of realtors do a good job, some don't, but that's kind of our starting off point. Tanya, you might want to just jump in here.
Well, it is a great question, Carolyn. And in the last 2 years, I'd say it's been a little more difficult. You know, the outreach events are certainly helpful. Now that farmers markets are, they're a go, we'll have booths at the farmers markets on all three, you know, islands, Orcas, Lopez, and San Juan. Great Islands Cleanup, you know, partnering with other like organizations, being a part of the stewardship network. We have this year. And so there is work on getting the Green Village back together. I don't know if this will be called that, but having a more of a presence and having activities and presentations similar to the Ag Guild, if we can get enough participation. I hope that that will also spread not just our information, but a lot of like-minded organizations as well. And always, I mean, Lincoln kind of pointed that out, between social media, online papers, some print papers, it's hard to, I think, you don't really know who you're connecting with and when. So word of mouth is, I think, a big one. And always, feel free to send people to my email or, call. I'm the one that's in the office the most. I mean, we have a great stewardship staff that's out in the field. They do a wonderful job communicating, I think, with the public when asked and when approached. Yeah, it's a constant, I won't say battle, that's not the right word, but it seems like technology just changes on a dime, and you want to be able to do at least one or two well. So our social media is Facebook and Instagram, and I try to hit at least as many of those Facebook pages that communities have, but each island has sort of their own tree as well. So that's a long way of saying we're putting it out there wherever we can. So thank you for that question.
And any ideas would be greatly appreciated.
I've been working on the test you have to take at the ferry landing that determines which island you get to go to.
Might be on the wrong island.
I think controversy works well. I'm thinking of something maybe over near Mount Grant, something about access or something maybe, would raise the interest. I really appreciate your question, Carolyn, because I worry a lot about how few people participate in these kind of community events. And I think the whole COVID era has hurt that. And even though it's so easy to sit here at home and have a beer or two and be on a Zoom call, it's I really worry sometimes we're so divided and so separated and so worried about our next days, our next week, where's the food going to come from, how the kids doing, everything else, the very important things. But I sometimes wonder if we're not able to think too far ahead out here. And I appreciate your question very much. And it's one of the things I'm concerned with too. And this is a wonderful outfit here. And I just wish we'd seen a few more folks on the call tonight.
Yeah, it's definitely tough. There's lots of competition. Or at the end of the day, I'd say, I'm a prime example. I signed up for a great Zoom yesterday with the Washington State Poet Laureate. Completely forgot when I got home. Got to making dinner and remember this morning. So it's just a lot of input. I would like to make a shout out. Is it make a shout out? Put a shout out that, the monthly commission meeting is the third Friday of every month, 8 a.m. We're still on Zoom, working towards possible in-person or hybrid, just haven't connected with the right location yet. And on our agenda and minutes page, it's under the connection piece of the website. You can find the link and the agenda. It's usually up by Monday, sometimes Tuesday, people's schedules. So I invite everyone to come, if possible. We do record them. They're on the YouTube channel. You can always watch them later if you can't be there, and send in comments afterwards as well. And I will also make a shout out for Doug, who, if you had any interest in learning more about Oak Prairie restoration, he is one of the speakers for an upcoming webinar on April 27th. And I think that's through WSU Extension in San Juan County. So if anyone's interested in that, I put that on the link on the Facebook page, but you can email me or send in the chat, and I'll get that information to you. You have to register, but it's all free. A lot of information. We've got a couple minutes. Any last comments before bid you farewell and thank you?
I just wanted to say thanks for those of you who did show up here and engage us with some questions, listen to the presentations, which were great. It's heartening to see people that are engaged. And I wish more people like more people were engaged in these sorts of things. And the best thing we can do is just utilize word of mouth, probably. Just talk to your friends. Talk about it at a dinner party. Talk about it at anywhere. And I just think that being engaged in a community is very important, and we can only hope that more and more people do that. So thank you all for showing up.
If anyone's interested in District 2 and District 3, we'll be there on the 20th and the 27th. So if you want to hear what's going on in the other islands, come back. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Yeah.
Have a good rest of the week.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great presentation.